Hey, you are on YouTube.
Get your phone, though. Can you put this in live, right? You on YouTube? Let's see. Wait till you good. We'll keep it going. We'll keep it going for now. Are you on YouTube or Facebook? Facebook. Can you see the slideshow? We ain't started yet. I know. I was just thinking. That's what that. Want anything? Like we're streaming anything right now? Or no? Come back.
Hey, Jordan. Yeah, I forgot to
Yeah.
When I talk, I heard you though. Molly had the thing up on their computer and I had it up on my phone. I don't. Yeah.
Pretty good. Let's see what's up real quick with this.
What's your page? I got Metro PBS. Not really, but that's what it feels like a lot of times.
They came through? They came?
No, not yet.
So it's live on Eric Jackson and not on Black Hill? What I did is just what I did.
It's like a step. At least how I see it, it's like,
Let me try that.
Sure. Can you check it now? Check it now. Can you check it now?
I'm done.
Maybe like 1 minute.
Hey, Justin. Like 1 minute.
It started.
That's enough. How do you? This is that. Hey, peace, y'all. And again, happy Maroonteenth. Happy Juneteenth. It's Black Yield Communication Organizer and Archivist Jordan Taylor, here to bring you the culmination, the grand finale of our Maroonteenth weekend. Thank y'all for showing up. I'm happy to see people in here. We're streaming live on Facebook and on Instagram. So if you know anyone that may be interested, that may want to, learn more about Maroonage, learn more about Maroonteenth, Juneteenth, what we got going on, it's going to be a great discussion. So make sure you send out that link to them, share it with them, like the page, subscribe, repost, all that good promotional stuff. So listen, today we have a very special guest. We have Black Yield Serving Director, Brother Eric Jackson, coming to talk to us about Maroonage. But before we get into that, we just want to give some thank yous. We want to thank everyone that streamed the premiere on Friday of Dysplasia. I want to thank the filmmakers for coming by. I want to thank Ashley for coming through podcasting. We have a live podcast from that event that will be coming out this Friday. So if you missed the live discussion, make sure you stay tuned to our YouTube and our our podcast feed, just to make sure you're in the loop. Yesterday, we had Mama Juanita Day. Thank you to everybody that celebrated that with us. Hoping to get that out to you all on YouTube later too, because it was a great event, man. So many people to thank. We're just grateful. And then after that, we had the Liberation Lounge, DJ by the one and only DJ Mysterious. So again, packed week. Excited to bring it home. We got a conversation about Maroonage. Let's bring in the good brother Eric Jackson. Brother Eric, how you feeling?
Good. I feel nice. I'm excited to share. I can't wait till you start asking me questions.
I'm excited too. Something that y'all may not know about this man is that he's been talking about Maroon society way before Maroonteenth. This ain't something that just started, man. He's been studying Maroon, studying their ways and ways that they have shaped our practice moving forward. So, Brother Eric, first question, you ready?
Yeah.
What's a Maroon? For everybody watching that may not know.
Maroon. All right, so from my perspective, let me back up and say, one, I appreciate that because it is true. I've been saying for at least the last year that I'm gonna become a hood scholar on Maroonage and Maroon communities. From my perspective, what I'm thinking is, generally speaking, you can't imagine a world that you don't know exists. You know what I'm saying? You can't imagine what could be if you don't know what could be. So I think when I learned about Maroon communities, I was reading a book called Black Movements in America by Dr. Cedric J. Robinson. And his work has been largely about the Black radical tradition and all of that. And people would know him before he passed on from that. But I first learned about Maroonage through that, just thinking about how Black people have resisted since the Ma'afa, you know what I'm saying, the transatlantic slave trade. And as Sister Nika Namdi talked about, the first displacement that happened, the first act of apartheid that happened, right? And so resistance has always been a part of this process. And so with that being said, from my perspective, we need to know that. So to your question, Maroons, right? A Maroon is a person, I would say a Maroon or Maroons are people who engage in the process of Maroonage, live in Quilombos or Maroon societies or Maroon communities, depending on how you see it and depending on, where things are. I mean, there might be different debates around one thing or another. But the short of it is, these are people's, and contrary to people's belief, these are not just Africans. These are Africans, indigenous peoples of any particular land, and even white people in servitude who are engaging in active resistance and building community in spaces and places where the plantation system could not get them, essentially. So these are people who have bet on their survival, their liberation, and moving away from the plantation and the enslavement system to create their own community society with gardens and farms, with trades, with producing and creating their own medicine and medicine systems. And so you're talking about like a complex reality, but ultimately not only because we have that language of like runaway slave, right? And one, I denounce that idea of slave. We're talking about being enslaved, not being slaves. And this is one example where people have said, not only am I not going to do it, I'm going to put the work into creating it. And I by no means want to romanticize it, because the first generations of Maroons, whether it was in the United States of America, in the Caribbean, in South America, on the African continent, wherever it might be, wherever Africans were and attempted to be enslaved, Maroonage was a response. That was the thing that like people died because they didn't. I mean, especially in a new context, you don't understand the native plants, you don't understand the context. Winters are hard, and if you don't have the materials that the slave plantation system had, then you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes it's stealing, sometimes it's engaging in taking. You know what I'm saying? Not just stealing, but like just taking it or going to war or whatever was necessary to survive. And the first generations of Maroons didn't survive. So it's not an easy thing, you know what I mean? But Maroonage was a process. And as we talk about, like, the difference between freedom from the white pen through legislation, emancipation, and all of this stuff, and from the black hand, that's important. Those two things.
You're good, man. I see why you get paid the big bucks.
Nah, I'm not.
Because I say that he's good, y'all. Just a little behind the curtain. I was going to ask him, why is it relevant to study Maroons now? As y'all know, it's Juneteenth weekend. We're celebrating Juneteenth. I just combined Juneteenth and Maroonteenth. We're celebrating Juneteenth and we're celebrating Maroonteenth. But that white pen versus black hand idea is, I think, especially prevalent. And we're starting to see kind of the consciousness evolving of different people on social media, different people like, okay, you're giving us Juneteenth, but what are you giving us? You know what I mean? So can you speak a little bit to that idea of us kind of reclaiming our own traditions and setting new norms?
For sure, yeah. I mean, that's really the thing of it. One of the things that we have to denounce if we are serious about liberation is that liberation has to come from the liberationists, right? It can't be something that's received by the oppressor that the oppressed happens to kind of model and move. So, for example, what that means, and I'll return to the Maroon idea, and also really resist that idea of one versus the other. It's not versus. We're talking about lifting up liberation, different pathways. But anyway, what we end up happening, like there's this notion, right, that white institutions, white people, and white supremacy has an invested interest in black people and in other people in particular, people who are willing to do abolition work or justice work or equity work. There's a vested interest in people having a particular way of struggling, right? So that's why you got an MLK Day, right? That's why you got like there's a way to struggle, a non-violent struggle, and throughout grad school and all of that, that's what they talked about. And I question like, why just that? You feel me? Because that's not the only thing we talking about,
And it's
right?
also disrespectful to the memory of our ancestors to box them in that way.
Absolutely. I mean, just in the example of a MLK, there's many problems with that. One, to single out one person. That's the one problem. Two, to presume or to even, like you said, describe that struggle as purely nonviolent, and to miss out an entire part of the canon of speeches and perspective and philosophy. Nonviolence was a tool. It wasn't their way of being, right? Nonviolent resistance was still resistance, and it was seen as a certain way. And so that's what's perpetuated as the way of being. And so when you start to think about struggle, and it happened with me personally, if I'm honest, when I started learning about organizing when I was a student at Morgan State University, go Bears, I was, when I like learned about organizing, I was like, oh, that's organized. I thought we stopped doing that in the 60s. And I thought that that's what white people do, rather than having a full breadth of understanding of what all the possibilities are, right? And there are many pathways, in so much that, again, sticking to the civil rights struggle, the civil rights struggle have been relegated largely to the bus boycotts, the March on Washington, and several things, when an entire generation of people engaged in so-called civil rights struggles that went from a spectrum of teaching and preaching in churches, counter sit-ins, to active physical resistance, to armed struggle, that all of that, and also not relegated to the southern part of the United States of America. You're talking about all throughout the continent of Africa, all throughout the continents of or the countries within South America, Central America, Mexico, throughout the world. Wherever there have been people who've been oppressed by imperialism, there have always been resistance. Some of it is civil rights. We call it different things, but ultimately these are various pathways to liberation. And so why people need to understand Maroons is because it's important for us to recognize that, I wish we had a graphic right now to like really share it. But the thing is, it's like there's this picture that I really appreciate and that we use often to share this idea and this notion of enslavement. When we talk about where our people come from, there's this picture of these enslaved people literally fighting and mauling white people, right? If you're going to actively subjugate me, you are actively being violent. It is your very way. And so the only response from my perspective is resistance, regardless of how it comes out. Whether it's resisting to even hear you and walk away, whether it's slapping the piss out you, or whatever it need to be. What I believe that the liberationist has to do is, one, cease the idea of purism. There is no one way to be, right? It is to be fully ourselves, and in doing so, recognize that different circumstances require different approaches. And I think that lifting up Maroonage at the same time that we celebrate Juneteenth allows us to celebrate, like, yay, this is a celebration of our ancestors recognizing that they were illegally, right? So now I'm gonna use the word illegally enslaved for 2 years after they were spiritually illegal anyway for forever. We can lift that up, but also wanting to lift up that, like, white folks free physical bodies, but people for a long time have been freeing themselves, and so we got to lift up various ways of resistance and seeking our own abolition and our own liberation.
Let's get into some of those people that have been freeing themselves, because there's a extensive, just, I don't know, phrase would be catalog, pantheon of ancestors who have either literally identified as Maroons or embody Maroon values and beliefs. So let's get into some of those ancestors. I did a little bit of research myself, and one of the first things that came up was my guy Marcus Garvey. Just that idea of let's build up our equity here and then establish our own land. I also came across a sister, and if I butcher her name, forgive me, but she's alive right now. She's, I think, in her 40s and 50s. Her name is Gina Fo, and she moved from the United States to Ghana, and she just was talking about the cultural differences and the big differences. And okay, I feel like the society was made to me, to cater to me as a black person. So with that in mind, who are some names that come to mind when I ask you?
If I'm honest with you, Brian, I appreciate the question, but I also got to flip it, because I don't really try to think about names, right? I think one of the fallacies that we have in following the pathways that we've been given at school, we study personalities rather than studying processes. We study men and women rather than movements and moments, right? and other people. I don't mean to just relegate folks to men and women or however people identify, but it's personalities rather than process. And so for me, I think when I think Marcus Messiah Garvey, I'm not diminishing, but I'm also recognizing that there are many people who only know of Marcus Messiah Garvey because of hundreds of thousands of people throughout time and space, and because of the organization, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, that actually, when it comes down to it, as a strategist, Amy Ashford, his first wife, was actually probably the biggest strategist. Marcus Messiah Garvey was good in terms of being a public speaker, could generate energy, but in terms of who embodied the work and who organized folks across continents, Amy Ashford. You would know that Amy Ashford has been a part of this work for a long time, and also Amy Garvey, who was the second wife. Amy, I believe, huh?
Yeah,
you like them Amy's, huh?
You really like them Amy's.
Anyway, and not that really, like, I ain't trying to placate or tokenize the women. Like, I'm legitimately, but there's also delegation of people who went to Liberia to set up shop. If folks don't know that, Liberia was given to formerly enslaved Africans in the United States and actually moved to Liberia. The Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League has something to do with that. I think about directly think about maroon communities in Suriname, in Haiti or Haiti, and the revolution there that created the first nation state that was run by formerly enslaved Africans. That is the equivalent of today, formerly enslaved or formerly incarcerated, which probably is the same. Formerly incarcerated persons saying, "Look, we taking over this jail and we living here." You feel me? That's essentially what we're talking about. So there are many opportunities. I mean, many examples. There is the Black consciousness movement in South Africa that I've been studying a lot more. Man, there's tons of pathways. You know, think about cooperative development. I know we're going to talk about that, but cooperative development, thinking of the types of worker-owned cooperatives and cooperative businesses that have developed. Think about the free towns that gave us the Black Wall Streets of the world in Durham, North Carolina, and in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that people talk about a lot, but folks don't know that the Freetown movement was a big thing. You know, people getting out of enslavement because of emancipation, and right before Reconstruction and during Reconstruction, creating these communities that some of them actually still exist today as Black locales. And so these are different approaches or different methodologies of freedom and liberation that actually, if I can do a quick plug, that I'm working on right now, and several things. One audio book kind of format, and another in a zine to kind of talk about the different ways. Because I believe that if the biggest atrocity that freedom fighters have today, from my perspective, is not having this sense of I don't know what to do. But I don't know what to do because because it's too many options, but I don't know what to do because I don't know what exists for me. So it's like walking up to the Chipotle counter and being like, what am I going to get today? Versus I don't know what to eat because I don't have nothing to eat. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I want to be able to have so many options that it's like, what do I employ in this situation? And so we have enough information to spread out with. In fact, isn't that what makes white supremacy what it is? Yeah. Isn't that what makes white privilege what it is? Yeah. You got, like, literally not only just the pervasiveness, like I can wake up today and start whatever shit I want to, and it's gonna be okay. And maybe I got that and it's too simplistic, but still having the breadth of examples, I think, allow us to have the breadth of possibilities moving forward.
Can you speak to the connection between rural communities and the Rastafari communities?
Oh, for sure.
So for y'all, that's let me restate
sure.
it. In case y'all didn't know, Brother Show asked about the connection between Maroon communities and Rastafari communities. And shout out to IG Live. If y'all have any questions, feel free to populate them in the chat. It's interactive.
IG, Facebook, YouTube. You got any questions? Please do. And even after this stream, if you have any questions, like, we still here. We're gonna keep doing it. But the question of connectivity between Rastafari communities and Maroon communities really is not like any difference from my understanding, except the difference is Rastafari as a way of being, as a way of moving in life, is a principle based off the living and the divinity of His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I, Jah Rastafari. And so, but Maroon community, a lot of Rastafari communities come out of Maroonage, right? In the mountains and in the countryside, if you will, in Jamaica and throughout the world. But I would say, as a very baseline, that Rastafari is like it's just like life force. You know what I'm saying? And Rastafari have also come out of other pathways as well. But for sure, I believe that there is a strong Pan-African history and focus from the Maroon struggles over generations that led that made way for the idea of Marcus Messiah Garvey's prophecy of looking to the east, from whence will come your king, right? A black king, right? And that idea, and folks looking all around and searching all throughout life and seeing His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I being coronated, and now it's like, ah. But I think that Maroonage is essentially, not to be too crass, the lubrication that allow life to be, right? In in unhealthy situation, you may not be able to see that. But I think Maroonage, which I think regardless of if you grew up in a community that was isolated from the white the white norm, you could still get it if you have it. And so that's why unearthing and rejuvenating this idea that like, there's not one way. In fact, there's not even just two ways to engage in being fully human. And I think that Rastafari became a way for folks because of the lubrication that was the Pan-African connectivity that Maroonage allowed for. You know what I'm saying? So that's my response immediately. Give thanks.
Well, any other questions on the chat line? All right. So from here, listen, we talked a lot about organizing, we talked a lot about movements, we talked a lot about Maroonage as a whole, but I want to ask you, because I feel like there's no better person to ask, how do we intersect this with our work? Where do we see this in our organizing as Black Youth?
For sure. I mean, so two things come to mind, right? And immediately, it is as a Pan-African institution, our job, I believe, is to live out and embody, not just talk about, espouse, but to embody the ideas of Pan-Africanism, which has to do with the the interconnectedness, interdependence, and eternal connectivity of African peoples, right? Those, whether we were born on the continent of Africa or not, and whether we're talking about physical connectivity, or we're just talking about spiritual connection or culture and value, because the cradle of civilization is in the land that we call Africa today. You know what I'm saying? The socio-political reality disconnect us from one another to be, a black person, brown person, white person, the pseudoscience of race, right? We know that. But in attempting to do that, I think that the only way to do it is to dig and to excavate and to understand and to also engage within our own spiritual practices to be connected to them. You know what I mean? Be connected to where we come from. And so a part of it is our political education work to reclaim, restore, and reconnect with what we come from. Whether we're disconnected from it or not, we need to do that because it is the very base, it is the very essence of the work that we do. I don't think that you can organize for Black liberation or Black land and food sovereignty without having an understanding of a basic baseline, a basic foundation, and why not have that foundation being African, right? And by African one, it means really African ones, right? Like there is an umbrella that has thousands of ways. There's no monolith. You know what I'm saying? So we have to study that. We have to understand that. We have to practice it, and we got to fail at it, and we gotta figure out how we do it, and we got to create evolutions of it, because that's one of the beautiful things about being an African is that our ways are so fluid in the sense that we create new ways all the time in different contexts. And so I think that studying maroon communities and studying resistance in general gives us more of a larger playbook. That's number one. Number two, I see our work as renovating and rejuvenating the spirit of maroonage through the various pathways. We're growing food, we're establishing a cooperative grocery store, we're securing land, we are doing research, and we are, really organizing folks beyond the political education, organizing people to align ourselves. And so, I mean, at this point, you're gonna have people having the opportunity to kind of share their work about that, so that they can answer fully. But that is for me what I want to see, and I've always thought of Black Yield Institute as an institution that is a nebula, right? That creates things, that creates celestial beings, right? If you're a nerd like me, you'll know that the nebula is the space where stars and other celestial beings are born. And I believe that we are a movement institution that creates movement institutions.
And I think that's a beautiful metaphor, and it's so counter to white supremacy, to American culture specifically, because American culture teaches you monopoly. From the time you're 5 years old, 6 years old, you're kicking out the board game. It's like, I need to own everything on this block. When it's like, no, actually, I got a hotel, you got a waterworks, you got the railroad, and we all come together in community. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So just
cooperation.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Cooperation. It is the very spirit of who we are as indigenous peoples. And so, anyway, I know we got Siglali, who's going to talk about
cooperation.
Cooperation. You see that? So, thank y'all. I appreciate y'all. I may or may not return at the end, but I hope that people understand why we have to be able to study Maroonage, and that it's not like, why not Juneteenth? Because it is Juneteenth. It's Juneteenth plus, right? So we want to celebrate all the types of ways that we're liberated, and cooperation is one of those ways.
Hey, thank you, brother Eric.
I appreciate you, bro.
Likewise. Coming up next, we'll have our food susu organizer, Siglali Ceballos, coming to talk about building this food co-op, y'all.
Thank you.
Siglali! Oh man, you so excited you moved the table. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling good.
Having a great
Maroonteenth?
Maroonteenth?
Of course. Yeah. It's just beautiful to be a part of like a continuation of this work, and just hi everyone. I'm Siglali Ceballos. I'm with the Cherry Hill Food Co-op. And yeah, thank you for inviting me.
So first things first, what's a food co-op? Or what is a co-op? Even in the most basic level, what is a co-op?
Yeah, so a cooperative is an institution. There could be many variations of it. It could be a business that's owned by workers. It can be a consumer. It can be owned by consumers as well. So what we're building is a food co-op, which is the folks who shop at the co-op are owners of the cooperative.
I think, hold on, say that again, because I think that's a major thing, and it just ties back into that point we just were talking about nebulas and stars and institution building. So please emphasize that again for me.
Yeah, so a food co-op in particular is a grocery store owned by the community, right? So when we think of Giant, Save-A-Lot, all of these places, even Whole Foods, those are owned by a board that's owned, just by like really rich capitalists, and which function in a white supremacist sort of way, right? And all they do is just extract. They extract. And yeah, you're getting food, but like your dollars are being given to these capitalists. A food co-op is different because it's there to feed people, and folks own it collectively, right? Which is just a very different kind of institution. There's food co-ops, as consultants that we work with have said, you can know a food co-op and you only know a food co-op. Every food co-op is different. You can go to a Shoppers or a Giant and it's gonna be practically the same, but each food co-op is tailored to the needs of the community, right? So there's food co-ops with clinics, health clinics in the back of the grocery store, which was demanded by the community. There can be a food co-op with childcare, right? So it really just reflects on the needs of the community and the imagination and the creativity of the community, which makes it a fundamentally different thing.
How does a food co-op serve as a tool for freedom?
Well, Black Yield Institute is, for land and food sovereignty for Black and Brown people, right? That's the whole mission. And essentially controlling the food here in Cherry Hill. There hasn't been a grocery store in over 16 years. There was developers who came last year to build new housing. And you know what they said? They said, oh, you're probably going to have to wait another 15 years because Cherry Hill's not a viable location. Really? Whereas millions of dollars are spent here on food, it just leaves the community.
And who are they to make that judgment and that determination about if my neighborhood is viable to have a grocery store? Like,
it's not about feeding people to them.
Yeah, it's not. And
it's about this. Too. It's about money, la plata, right?
Because, so for y'all that were watching yesterday, watching our Maroonteenth, we did interviews with elders, and a lot of them spoke. It didn't make the video you all saw, but a lot of them spoke about the viability of the A&P, the grocery store that used to be in the community, and how it was always full. You know what I mean? It was always a bustling resource. So again, to hear that and to hear like just the struggles and the barriers and barricades placed on getting a grocery store in a community. Oh, we got a question on IG Live?
So do food co-ops support keeping money circulated in the
community? So for food co-ops, yes. Because usually when people establish food co-ops together, they want folks in the community to be able to work at these food co-ops. There's also food co-ops who allow worker co-ops, and that's a worker-owned business, to run the food co-op, right? And so worker co-ops are usually local. It's not, it's not the same as just like working for Walmart or these other institutions. They get paid a lot more, right? Because you're not giving money to shareholders, the dividends. Most of that money stays with the workers, and then obviously you have to pay your expenses and things like that. But yeah, when they're local institutions, that money flows within the community. And there are food co-ops who, even where they procure food, right? They procure food from reflecting their values. So, our values with the pop-up market, we run pop-up markets, plugging that in. Pop-up markets every first and second Saturday in Cherry Hill. We procure our produce from Black-led farms in Baltimore and also just the Eastern Seaboard, right? So food co-ops can also reflect those values. So even the money where you're buying your bulk produce can go to the communities that you want that money to, as opposed to these giant corporations who get their produce from China or from slave labor in other countries, right? Latin America and the Caribbean.
So real quick, because I think we can go on all day talking about this, but what are some other examples of cooperatives? Because I'm sure there are people out here that may be thinking, wow, that sounds like a really cool model, but I'm not necessarily in the grocery store business.
Yeah, so I can bring up two that are amazing models, also very reflective of Cherry Hill. So there's Gem City Market, which just opened their doors. They just opened their doors. Woo! Like, congratulations to them in Dayton, Ohio. They're also majority Black and Brown community, and also just the organizing that went into that. And Mandela Grocery Cooperative in California, in Oakland, California as well. Definitely check them out because they have a really great social media presence. They very much make it known that this is possible, even in communities where these corporations are saying like, oh, we're not going to get enough money from Cherry Hill. And we did the research, and the research said that the money leaving Cherry Hill for food alone is in the millions. So it's viable. It's just that for them, it's not about food.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything else you want to tell the good people?
I definitely wanted to add just like that this work is a continuation of Maroon institution building, right? And this is hundreds and hundreds of years of work, right? So in Ecuador, Maroons are called cimarrones. This is Latin America. And they created the Zambo kingdom in Esmeraldas. This is in the 17th century. They controlled land, right? So that in extension controls food. The Spanish kingdom actually had to cooperate with them and engage with them as an independent entity, right? So like, this is not just something coming out now, like cooperatives, food co-ops, like this work generally is part of this longer history, as Eric was telling earlier, right? So Just want to talk about that and just plugging in some of the stuff that we're in now. Um, we have over 1,200 pledges for the food co-op. We fundraised over $20,000, mostly in $10 to $50 increments, right? So these are from individual people who pledged their support. We completed a market study, which showed like how the money is flowing. Right now, we're business planning. We just finished our bylaws process, and we'll be incorporating by the end of this year. So it's a very grueling process, but it's happening. This isn't happening anywhere else in Baltimore. And food co-ops in other places in the states. I think the not the vision, but the perception of food co-ops is like they're really white, right? And so like what we're doing is really important because it's showing that like no, this doesn't have to be in just like these bougie neighborhoods or like whitewashed neighborhoods.
Like reimagining things.
Got another question.
Who is it from? Let's shout them out too.
Beanie Beanie 27.
Hey, Janine.
Oh, hey.
What's going on? So the question is, what other forms of economic stability are needed to launch a food co-op and to keep it going?
That's a damn good question.
Yeah, so biggest thing, shop at your food co-op, right? Support your food co-op. Obviously, memberships have to be sold. So once we incorporate, actually, that's when we'll be asking memberships. When you sell a membership, that's just a one-time payment, usually of $100 to $200. We're figuring that out with the business planning. But that's once in a lifetime, and you are a shareholder. You own a share of that food co-op. In Cherry Hill alone, there's more than 5,000 people here, and I can't remember like specifically how many households, but one share owned is a household, right? So buy into your co-op, also purchase things from your co-op, and at Blackfield Institute, the process of like how we're moving forward with this is also the food co-op can't stand alone as an institution. You have to develop other kinds of cooperative businesses, whether that be the farmers that we engage with, even with the pop-up market. We work with vendors, individual vendors that don't necessarily have a storefront, but that's still a collaboration. That's still cooperation, right? They get to up their profile, they get to sell, and also just have access to the resources that we have as an institution. So it's a really sort of wholesome process. It doesn't just stay at like, let's establish this grocery store. This grocery store is part of this larger strategy, this larger framework of independence, cooperativism, collaboration.
A lot of the beliefs and ideals that we saw in the Maroon community that we talked about earlier. Thanks, Ilana.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so coming up next, we're gonna have the farm manager of the Cherry Hill Urban Community Garden, the one and only. Now we not related, but we got the same last name, Aisha Taylor. We got a crowd. Can we get some claps? Then the chair shrink when you got in.
I know, man. Nah, this can't be. I need a phone book or something.
Listen, you take my chair. Listen, you take my chair. We make it happen. See, that's a little more, man. Thanks. How you feeling?
Good, man.
Good.
Hey.
You're here to talk about.
Chain.
Oh man, it's my emblem. Man, keep me grounded and protected. Try to study from the ways of people that came before us. Nice.
Yes.
We're here to talk about land security, land insecurity, things of that nature. You've been, I would say, leader of Cherry Hill Urban Community Garden, for lack of better phrasing. Why is it important to own this land, know this land? Why? What? I guess my question I'm asking in a roundabout way is, why is land security important?
I mean, we talk about self-determination. You know what I mean? Our ancestors, we worked the land for other people to build their economic foundation and base. We have to build that ourselves. And when you own the land, you can, you pretty much can dictate what you grow, what you do. One, we know we're gonna grow food and grow people regardless, but you can utilize the land for different things. You know what I mean? And as I was like, listening and to everybody's interview and like Eric explaining the Maroonteenth concept, a lot of things was coming to me as far as how we use the land. So we do use the land for cooperation, right? So like you got right now in the Cherry Hill Urban Community Garden, we have an acre and a quarter. On that acre and a quarter, we are cooperatively working with a beekeeper, right? So we're providing a space for like knowledge creation, innovation. She started with 2 hives. She up to 9 now, right? So
And
now
shout
you
out to
building,
John Newman Honey, John Newman Bee Company.
right?
Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to plug that in there so if people want to support.
So we have that. Then we have the community garden. We have about 24 raised beds. Last year we went through a pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had about 9 people come to the garden interested in growing their own food. Some people who have already, might have had experience growing food on before, others who didn't. And to be able to create a space where people can learn from each other. One of our garden members, I mean, this woman is very like she love it, but she's from Nigeria. She grew okra, tomatoes. We had another garden member who grew like some variety of peach hot peppers, right? We and then in the middle of the pandemic, people are like trading vegetables, teaching each other about different varieties. And then we also do like cultural preservation, right? So our ancestors and our oppressors' diets were different. We have a space where we can grow food that's culturally appropriate to us or to the community that we serve. So like we're growing okra, we're growing tomatoes, we're growing sweet potatoes. We also experiment with different crops to grow because I mean that's just a part of like you know what I mean. The goal like you have to be innovative. You know what I mean. So we're growing peppers that are still being able to be harvested after the first frost. Then we think about how we creatively use the land. So we also like along the fence line of the property is great. So you think again, you're thinking about different ways to like make money. We use the land for events and culture. People, this sometimes people have their first experience seeing food grow. You know what I mean, and or participating in the infrastructure. It's a space where everybody can exist, and I talk about this a lot. It's just not a space for a farmer. You got educators on the space. You got doctors. You have the dentist. I have volunteer dentists come before, and she's saying like, yeah, this is really important because nutrition is a big factor on how people's teeth, are. So we talking about, the bigger implications of health. Is no grocery store in Cherry Hill. We probably the only people you can like get a fresh tomato from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sheesh.
The only greens, you know what I mean? People who buy greens at the pop market, those greens are being harvested within at least a 3-day window. So we're talking about medicine, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can't get that if we don't own the land. We're gonna have to keep purchasing from other people, which is fine to purchase from black farmers, black businesses, you know what I mean, or our allies, but we can't rely on
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Question from my BB Tara.
Hey, Tyra.
Tara.
What sort of supports are needed from the community to help bring this into fruition?
Yeah, I think support from the community would be one. I've always encourage inquiry. You know what I mean? Ask, whether it's through the fence or coming on the land, seeing how what ways you want to participate. Like we have artists, so we work with artists. They come and bring their art in space. If you just need to come, somewhere to sit in the middle of some trees and reflect or decompress, volunteering, supporting the pop market, getting a garden plot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think just to follow up on Maisha, it's really imperative that we realize the creativity that we have with the land. We always talk about creativity being a part of our work and creativity being a part of our tradition. So just you running down, even though I've been there, but just you running down, like, yeah, we have garden plots, we have a beekeeper, we have people harvesting indigo, we have place for you to sit, place for you to cook out, we have food grown, we have music playing. You know what I mean? It's just such limitless potential. Yeah. Just I don't know. I had to take a moment. I had to take a moment. I was, so, sometimes you get transported to a moment in time, and I was just at the gut and feeling the air, feeling the sun, and feeling just grounded, just grounded. What else do we need to think of in terms of land security? What else should people home know? You know,
I mean, we know that land security costs money, right? So we need to think creatively and strategically about how we can work together to own land. And I know sometimes the notion of owning land is problematic because it's like, it was never anybody's land. I
yeah, it's
mean,
land.
it's land. But in this context of, white supremacy, we gotta play by the books or squat or take the land or I don't know. So yeah, I think like one, just kind of, garnering the financial support, and then also the social capital, so that people can see the value in it and stand with it if any time that somebody tries to attack.
Gosh, gosh. Is there any other thoughts? Anything you would like to add? Speak on things on your mind, feelings, ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see folks out at the garden, at the farm, whether you just want to see, you want to volunteer. We have volunteer days every Saturday from 9 to 12. If you want to support and actually purchase produce or support other vendors that we work with, showing up to our pop market on the first and second Saturdays. If you know somebody who live in Cherry Hill, if you live in Cherry Hill, if you live in Cherry Hill or know somebody live in Cherry Hill, tell them about Black Youth Institute. Tell them about Cherry Hill Urban Community Garden and make sure we see you.
Thank you, Maisha. That was beautiful. Last but not least, as we come to the conclusion of this beautiful program, again, thank y'all for joining us. We have our land sovereignty organizer.
What's going on, y'all?
Show us our.
What is happening?
You may have seen him yesterday on Instagram. Hanging out, cooling out, being cool.
Trying to just do my little thug thizzle over here, man. Absolutely. My name is Show Azal. I'm the land sovereignty organizer. Um, Here with Black Youth Institute. It's amazing, amazing work that we've already been at it for 6 years, and we moving forward. And it's the team's looking good.
I like that.
The team's
like to hear that. So, bro, as land sovereignty organizer, what is your goal? What are you trying to make happen? What would you like to see for Cherry Hill?
Black food, black land, black politics. I think we can focus our energy. I'm helping to further develop an action network. So a lot of my work will be revolving around that, revolving around encouraging and highlighting the repertory coordination that needs to happen from a policy context. So what that looks like for me as well is supporting this action network and building a Black Food Alliance that builds the collective power of Black growers and producers in Cherry Hill. It looks like developing a collective language and knowledge through political education, and also just creating a pool of resources for efforts organized to establish land and food sovereignty. I want this vision behind me to be actually in front of me. So like that's literally, I see it. I'm an artist. I'm a musician, and so this is I want that to sound like something. I want it to feel like something, and the human spirit is the perfect. It's just the perfect. It's the perfect instrument. It's like a trombone for me. So that's where I'm at right now. And so that looks away though. Like there's intense like self journeying that has to happen in order to engage with a group of growers to look at their crop as opportunities for small business and movement enterprise. And so, how are we organizing in a way that looks to that as an essential aspect of Black land and food sovereignty, so that we can continue to tell these stories of Mama Juanita and a brother Eric and a brother Jordan. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
A sister Maisha and everybody who's doing work in Black Yield Institute. So I'm inspired. I'm inspired by your presence, brother.
I'm happy to hear, bro. Likewise, hearing you speak so nuanced. It's nuanced, but it's very pointed and very intentionally about your goal as land sovereignty organized.
Yeah.
I was getting land sovereignty and food sushi mixed up in my head, so I'm happy I didn't mess that up here.
I can dig
A little
it.
behind the curtain moment, but
Yeah, we cool,
bro,
man.
I know that we're getting kind of low on time, and it's unfortunate because again, I can listen to everybody that we had speak today, from Brother Eric to Siglali to Maisha to Show to myself. I can listen to them speak for hours, and I do. It's kind of my job. But
Absolutely.
Brother Show, is there anything else imperative to your work that the people need to know?
Well, all of our work is in jeopardy right now, just based upon the resistance that we're choosing to stand up against when in the face of both ignorance and white supremacy. And so, our collective opportunity, and even the reason why Maroonteenth is virtual, even now, is based on a situation over at the community garden that requires our immediate, strategy, attention, reflection, and action. And so, if we can all coordinate and share our collective story about what's happening at the garden right now, and make sure that we are creating space for us to develop solutions, come on through. Let's grow together. Let's put our hands in the dirt and continue to. I'll see y'all next harvest. You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm on. Yeah, I mean, so that's where we at. It's a Black Yield thing.
Jeez, I got goosebumps. So, real quick, anyone in the chat, anyone on Facebook, on YouTube, do you have any questions, comments for the show while he's here?
Cool.
Yeah. With that being said, I want to thank you all for a very successful. Oh, I just got word that we got one more guest coming through. He might be somebody y'all remember. I think that he was just on this program. Oh, I thought it was falling down.
All right, look, I want us to close it out without, getting clear with folks. The question is like, hey, y'all was having this Maroonteenth joint at the farm, and then y'all was going virtual. So what happened? And so here we go. We have very much, a situation where we are negotiating. When we talk about land security, it's important. We talked about reclamation. We talked about organizing. We talked earlier about resistance, right? And Maroon communities resisting. Resistance is not going to go without resistance, right? And so I just want folks to know that, we have a very real threat to our ability to continue to work in the way that we have, ability to hear the things that Sister Maisha talked about, and really an opportunity for Brother Show, who just shared, to continue to do the work and the work that's captured by so many other people. Siglali, Brother Jordan, Sister Twanisha, Brother Lee, and Sister Teal, and all the work that we do, being just kind of like in question around how we do our work, where we do our work, and in very real way there's a possibility of displacement of our farm. But the thing is, we can rap about what that means in particular, and if folks are interested, please follow up. But for us, what I want to be able to do is just get clear with folks that, there is no question of if this work is going to continue, like Brother Show pretty much alluded to. We here, no question. The question is where. And so right now, as a steward on land owned by Housing Authority of Baltimore City, we're in a negotiation right now, or hopefully be able to show benefit of our farm. We've been asked to show benefit, how we benefit community, and so one of the very real things that you can help with right now, until we have our petition developed or what have you, to be able to share on social media, right? Where you are watching this, commenting, posting, how you see Cherry Hill Urban Community Garden and Black Yield Institute contributing not only Cherry Hill community, but also Baltimore City, just so that folks understand what is really happening beyond what's said that's happening. That's really all that I'm at liberty to share right now. But I will say that we're still on the land. is just a very real possibility. And that's what, when we talk about land insecurity, if you don't have tenure on that land, it's always, whether it's low frequency or high frequency, a threat to not being able to operate in the ways that we are and have been. Sister Maisha talked about this earlier, but like cultivating other people's land. But don't forget, before that, we were cultivating land. And in fact, the reason why we were cultivating other people's land was because of our expertise, not because of our less than humanness. That was a justification for why forced labor happened. And so we're here now continuing forward in that expertise. And we will continue and we will prevail. There's no question about that. But I know that there's one more question, and we'll entertain that before we
Curious if certain types of new housing development compromises the ability to grow food. And that's from Meanie Beanie 20 chat.
I think so. The question about like if housing development is kind of impeding on the ability to grow food, I would say no, not necessarily. I think that there are opportunities for. I think really what the barrier is the lack of imagination of white institutions. There are this idea and concept of agrihoods, right? This idea of being able to build. That's the 1 o'clock alarm. My bad. The ability to build housing and build community around agriculture has been a thing that white people have explored for some decades now, and also actually for some time, right? That's what the whole plantation system was like, and not everybody had plantations, but the whole idea of being able to build community around agriculture. You call that an egalitarian or agricultural society. I mean, that's what we had. And so I think that really what we're talking about at this time is a lack of imagination of what could be, rather than an impeding. That's what's impeding the imagination. And that's why our work is about, as Brother Show talked about, imagining what could be and creating that imagination, not only what is behind us, as you talked about, but seeing before us. That was really powerful. And in order to do that, as you see, even in this piece, there's housing, business, housing, and all of that. They don't have to be disconnected. And granted, some people might look at this and see it as like, oh, that's a utopian society. No, it's a reality that will happen. In fact, some of these realities are happening right now. Say, Lally talked about the food co-op, and we're working on various aspects of this, but we're talking about community building by our own terms. And that's what Maroonage is all about. So I would say that at the end of the day, it's really about how we maintain the relationships that we have with those histories that we just talked about a little bit, and how we materialize that in the real world. And that's what we're going to do, no question. Resistance is always going to have resistance, but that don't mean it's going to stop nothing, because it ain't stopping nothing, right? Like, ashe to that, like, ain't nobody going to stop that. And we talking about, like, this is what it is. This is what we do, and this is what we're going to continue to do. There's no question about, are we going to grow food? Yes. Are we going to establish a grocery store that's owned and controlled by the people? Yes. Are we going to continue to share information and produce content that will help to shape students, peers, and all of that? Yes. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Will we continue to lift up our ancestors? Yes. No doubt. You know what I'm saying? Will we continue to amplify the messages of what liberation looked like and to be liberation forward? Yes. Will we prevail? Yes. Will we keep the flame? Yes. Keep the flame. Appreciate y'all for watching. And look, King, if you don't mind,
I'm not saying you want to stick around and say goodbye to people.
I ain't gonna drop the mic.
You can't just leave like that. You just,
this is what I'll say. A couple things. Happy Maroonteenth. Happy Juneteenth. Happy Father's Day. And also, continue to show your support. If you can, again, leave a comment, send an email, show that you are down with us, that you ride with us. And if you purchase food from us, if you benefited directly, please communicate that. Also, get on our mailing list so that things like petitions and new information, our newsletter, can be shared with you. And also, if you're able, look, support us by donating money, by, bringing, like, having your time, you know what I'm saying, coming to the farm. This is in lieu of a work day, a ceremonial work day that we were going to have at the farm. But instead of doing that, volunteer your time today learning more about Maroonage, right? I would say volunteer your time today to learn more about what Black Youth Institute is doing. Explore our website, our new website that looks real good. This brother right here put a lot of work into it, and amongst other people. And we're going to continue forward, man. I'm really excited about this. We're going to continue in the spirit of Maroonage, and whether you can donate, volunteer, or otherwise, you can at least send some good energy, some good vibes. You can pray for us. You can tell your grandmother about us. You can send some good energy, and for no other reason. And if nothing else you can do, you can keep the flame and help us do that. That's it.
Man, that was strong. So you pretty much closed out. There's only one thing that we gotta let people know about. In August, y'all.
Yeah.
Y'all got another time to build community with us outside of our markets that we have the first, second of every month. We have Cherry Hill Food Week, August 15th through the
21st.
The 21st.
Sunday to Saturday, 7 days a week. Right, like listen, I'm talking about everything from youth events to events for femme identified persons, masculine identified persons, for young adults, for elders. We're gonna have a good time. So we're looking forward to it.
If y'all haven't realized by now, the goal of Black Youth Institute, we want to be holistic. So we want to. It might be a live stream. It might be a pop-up market. It might be a podcast. It might be a newsletter. It might be a documentary. It might be you coming out to a land and security panel. You never know what it's going to be, but we want to reach you all wherever you are. And wherever that is where we want to live, where we do live. I say that to say thank y'all for volunteering y'all time, watching this live stream. Again, engage with us, interact with us. Oh, that's the playoff music? Okay. In that case, they gave us the cue. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all afternoon. Happy Maroonteenth.
Peace, y'all. Blessings. Keep the flame.
Appreciate you, bro.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Oh, me?
Yeah,
y'all was doing all the work.
See you do it live.
Y'all was doing everything.
This